Please welcome back to the stage, Jeff Dawley.
That's great walk-up music. All right, welcome back from the break. Hope everybody is ready to go. We are here for the final stretch, and I will say that we saved the best for last. Our final speaker and keynote is Dare King. Before I do official introductions, please don't forget those questions. Have them coming for when we have our Q&A. Ms. King is the Chief Operating Officer for CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence. During her 18-year career at the CIA, Ms. King has delivered integrated technical, data, software, and analytics solutions to solve cross-cutting operational challenges. She established the first data analysis team in CIA's Open Source Center and helped to create the CIA's Data Science Career Service. She was promoted to the Senior Intelligence Service in 2013. Her private industry experience includes time as an executive director for a data analytics software company and 3 years as a mechanical engineer at General Motors. Ms. King has a bachelor's from the University of Pacific, go Tigers, and a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue University. Boiler up. Please help me welcome Ms. Dare King.
Thanks, Jeff.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dare. I can't see any of you because of the lights, but it's great to meet you all. It's great to be here tonight. I am, as Jeff said, the Chief Operating Officer for CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence. That's a lot of C's. You may not have heard of us before, and that's because we don't often do events like this. We don't often talk in unclassified settings at all. This is new for CCI, Center for Cyber Intelligence, and this is also new for me. So when I was invited to come talk here at GEOINT, I was thrilled, and I was like, yes, absolutely, 100%. And so I started to prepare for the talk and to come and share with you all the many ways that geospatial intelligence plays into the cyber mission, especially in light of the topic here, the theme for GEOINT, which is geospatial intelligence in all domains and all dimensions. And I thought, this is great, because cyber is probably not a domain that people often think about GEOINT playing a leading role, but it really does. So I met with our analysts at CCI, and I said, tell me all the great analysis that we have about the cyber threat and how geospatial intelligence informs that. And then I talked to our technical and human operators to ask how they partner with NGA and other GEOINT partners. And I met with our technologists to say, how does geospatial intelligence inform how we understand the technology in the cyber threat domain? And then I wrote this amazing speech, and I sent it to our publication review, and then to our Office of Public Affairs, and then to our counterintelligence shop, and they redacted the whole thing. So instead of that speech, today I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about CCI, what we do and who we are, and then I'll give you an unclassified overview of our assessment of the current cyber threat landscape. And finally, I'll talk about what that cyber threat landscape means to all of you and how important it is that we work together to counter that cyber threat. So first, a little bit about CCI. The Center for Cyber Intelligence serves as the CIA's cyber mission manager. We combine tools with technical and human intelligence to produce robust intelligence on the cyber threat, anticipate and counter that evolving cyber threat, and finally, to drive our capabilities and expertise to enable our partners' missions, and that's both within CIA as well as in the broader cyber community. With our partners in the IC and law enforcement, we advance the cyber mission and work together to identify opportunities and leverage relationships to grow our capabilities and inform intelligence. CCI blends our knowledge of human and technical tradecraft with our passion for innovation to continually evolve how we collect in cyberspace and how we provide insights to our policy consumers on the cyber threat landscape. So we're very different than our brethren in the cybersecurity office who protect CIA's networks. We also continue to expand our IC, DoD, and commercial partnerships and constantly advance our all-source targeting and technical analysis of our adversaries' cyber activities to maintain our edge. So as I mentioned, you may be surprised, but GEOINT plays a critical role in our cyber mission. Without the support of NGA and other GEOINT partners, CCI would not be able to paint such a clear picture of the cyber threat landscape. You may think of cyber as something ephemeral that happens all in cyberspace, but it really isn't. Hackers have locations. Servers have locations. Foreign cyber services have locations. And hacks have time, a temporal aspect. One of CCI's primary missions is to collect intelligence on and analyze foreign cyber threats to the United States. So I'm going to walk you through our current assessment of that cyber threat landscape and the critical role played by GEOINT. I had an amazing slide too, but it got redacted. So the cyber threat landscape, you'll not be surprised to learn that we focus a lot on the big four: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. These countries all have the capabilities and the intent to threaten US networks. We also warn about the activity of cyber criminals who are using tools like ransomware to impose costs on US economy and those of our allies. There's a lot of focus right now in Congress with thwarting those cyber criminals. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about each of these adversaries and their intents and capabilities. The PRC, the People's Republic of China, uses its program as a part of a coordinated, whole-of-government approach to gain strategic advantage over the United States, our allies, and our partners. PRC cyber operators seek to compromise more critical infrastructure and networks than any other US adversary. They've hacked telecommunications firms, managed service providers, vendors of broadly used software, and other targets to enable collection, cyber attack, and influence operations. Recently, we've seen an uptick in PRC interest in targeting space-based assets and a shift from a focus on espionage to preparations and positioning for cyber attack. Beijing is developing the cyber espionage and attack capabilities that it views as necessary to counter the United States. If Beijing perceived that a major conflict with the US were imminent, it would consider using disruptive and destructive cyber operations against our critical infrastructure and military networks to attempt to deter US decision makers and to undermine US force protection. While China has been in the news a lot lately for its cyber attack preparations, its military and intelligence services also continue to conduct a large amount of cyber espionage. China's hackers have stolen large amounts of data and personally identifiable information from countries around the world in nearly every sector. GEOINT has played an impactful role in understanding and countering the PRC cyber threat. GEOINT has been instrumental in identifying the vast cyber threat presented by the PRC and correlations and connections as we try to assess and understand what that threat actually physically looks like. Shifting to Russia, Russia's intelligence services operate global cyber espionage programs, targeting a wide range of government, private sector, education, and research. They also conduct a range of disruptive cyber activities. Much of what I've said about China is also true about Russia. And with the acute focus of the cybersecurity industry on Russia in light of the conflict in Ukraine, much of what we know about the Russia cyber threat is also available in open source. The Ukraine war has been especially important and is a key factor in understanding Russia's cyber operations for the last 2 years. And although the pace and impact of Russian cyber activity against Ukraine has fallen short of what many observers had expected, Moscow remains a top cyber threat and continues to refine its espionage, influence, and attack capabilities. We've learned a lot about how cyber might be used in a conflict by watching Russia's actions in Ukraine. Specifically in the case of Ukraine, or in the case of Russia, we've seen that they value collection over attack, which is why we've seen less of the destructive cyber effects that perhaps we would have expected and may not be true of other adversaries in a conflict. GEOINT has also played a critical role in helping us better understand the capabilities and responses of the Ukrainian cyber threat, or of the Russian cyber threat rather, in Ukraine as we've watched that war play out. In addition to the focus on Ukraine, you have to keep in mind that Russia's cyber operations continue to have global reach. Russia is improving its ability to use cyber to target US and allies' critical infrastructure, including battlefield mapping systems, Starlink, underwater cables, and industrial control systems. On to Iran. Iran's intelligence and security services have embraced cyber operations as a tool to combat its adversaries. Their actions in cyberspace during the Gaza conflict show how Iran seeks to use cyber attacks and cyber-enabled information operations to cause harm and spread disinformation. We've seen an increase in influence operations conducted by Iran-affiliated organizations since the beginning of the Gaza conflict. Iran's recent cyber attacks on industrial control systems, including in the United States, show Iran's growing efforts to cause real-world damage with cyber attacks. We've also seen Iran value geospatial intelligence data to collect for themselves to use for their own purposes and their own planning. Now, North Korea is an espionage, cybercrime, and attack threat that often goes undervalued or undernoticed. While the country receives significant attention for its thefts of cryptocurrency, its forces have matured and are also capable of achieving other objectives, probably including causing temporary disruption of some US critical infrastructure and business networks. Pyongyang probably stole between $600 million and $1 billion in cryptocurrency in 2023, including against a record number of US firms. In late 2023, North Korea hackers reminded us of their cyber espionage capabilities by breaking into the networks of South Korean chip manufacturers to steal sensitive product information. Their compromise of Russian defense companies was also recently in the media. It's worth mentioning that the DPRK, or North Korea, they're able to maintain this cyber espionage capability with limited to no connection to the outside world. During the COVID pandemic, the country was essentially on lockdown, and to this day, movement remains incredibly restrictive. So they are an incredibly capable and scrappy adversary when it comes to the Big Four. And finally, in CCI, we're focused on cybercrime, especially through ransomware. Cyber criminals are improving their effectiveness of their ransomware attacks by extorting funds, disrupting critical infrastructure, and exposing sensitive data. Cyber criminals differ from nation states in that they're financially motivated, for the most part. Their operations tend to be more tactical, and their sights are set on the defense industrial base, education, healthcare, academia, and any other vulnerable targets that have financial resources. In particular, we're mindful that ransomware is a tactic, it's not the threat vector itself. To that end, we've seen major cybercrime groups begin using new forms of extortion, such as threatening to release stolen data. They've also improved the ability of their malware to hit a wider range of targets, such as virtual machine hosts and network storage devices. So on this topic of technology, let me talk a little bit how technological change is influencing that cyber threat picture I just described. We expect that trends related to the increasing connectivity of devices and the adoption of technologies like AI will create a greater potential for surprise. For example, in the scale of malicious cyber operations, or in how critical functions evolve in ways that create new cyber vulnerabilities. AI is likely to initially provide cyber actors with productivity increases and lower the bar to entry by making it easier and quicker to generate code and fake content for spear phishing or influence operations. But it also benefits the defenders in being able to triage vast amounts of data and respond more quickly to threats or identify anomalous behavior on the network. So it's unclear whether AI will ultimately benefit the offense or the defense more, but we do expect that advances in AI will create surprises on both sides that could temporarily shift the balance between offense and defense over time. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about partnerships, how CCI engages across the community and with private industry, as well as what this all means to you. So I've shared with you our assessment of the cyber threat landscape. And my question is, what do they all have in common, all of these cyber threats? What they have in common is that they all target you. Each of you in this room is a target. Your families are targets. Your friends are targets. Your companies, your agencies are targets, whether you are with media, whether you're with academia, whether you're a student. And these nation-state actors that are targeting you, and cyber criminals as well, what do they want? They want your data for counterintelligence, tracking, targeting. They want access for future positioning and attack preparations. They want influence to push propaganda and misinformation. And they want funding for extortion and theft. The war in Ukraine has even compounded this landscape because Russian state and hacktivist actors are now showing an increased interest as well in US targets because of their perception of our support to Ukraine. In the context of cyber threats to the geospatial community in particular, there are two main groups. One, those that have robust geospatial capabilities and agencies, namely Russia and China, and two, those that don't, North Korea and Iran. Russia and China are targeting US geospatial targets, geospatial intelligence targets, to build capabilities that are as good as ours. They want to make sure that they're keeping up or one step ahead. Iran and North Korea want to steal your information and technology in the absence of their own. Faced with these adversaries and challenges, we have to forge the type of close partnerships that we haven't seen since the Cold War. But we need to do it in a new way. Unlike in decades past, the American private sector is our real engine of innovation in this fast-paced world of digital technology. And government has to learn to be a fast follower and an early adopter. This is particularly true in the field of AI, where current development requires an unprecedented level of specialized computational power and the expertise of a very small engineering community, both of which primarily reside in the private sector. We have to change our business models, making it easier for our partners in the private sector to work with us. And I know CIA is the worst of the whole bunch. And we have to become more comfortable with innovation, which requires experimentation and, yes, occasional failure. We have to embrace risk. At CIA, and I assume it's similar in many of your agencies and companies, our challenge is not novel ideas, it's not creative minds, and it's not even technical barriers. Our constraints lie in our acquisition processes, legacy security models, culture, and constrained resources. The only way to keep pace with our adversaries is to work together. One of the key pillars in CCI is that we have to focus on those things that only we can do and leverage our partners for everything else. And with respect to our cyber and other technical operations, we have to go where others cannot go and leverage our authorities judiciously. CCI has a robust relationship with the US national labs and academia to conduct cutting-edge research and development, and also to gain access to information and resources that those in the intelligence community may not be able to easily obtain. CCI also works collaboratively with our public and private sector partners to help provide strategic analysis to inform policy discussions, priorities, and decisions. Our engagement with the commercial sector focuses on sharing insights with appropriately cleared industry leaders to aid in their understanding of this cyber threat picture, and in turn, they share data with us that helps us fill gaps in our understanding of this key cyber threat actors. And this is an area where the government really needs to try harder to come together with industry, the private sector, and other parts of the government. That is to share information, especially when it comes to insights that companies can use to defend their own networks and intellectual property. When I'm on a panel tomorrow and we're talking about data, by the way, and I said, oh, we should talk about data sharing. And they're like, no, it's a trap, don't bring that up, because we're terrible at sharing data. But the truth is, in our connected world, particularly in the defense sector, a threat to one of us is a threat to every single one of us. Protecting American academic, private sector intellectual property, and infrastructure from foreign cyber threats is essential for us to maintain an edge against these cyber threat actors that I described. We're trying in venues much like this to be more open in sharing information that's useful across the government and the national security sector. And that's why you see me here today when perhaps CCI hasn't had a huge presence in the past. And it's also for recruiting. We need technical talent. So now you may not hear from CIA directly, but that doesn't mean we aren't contributing what we can. And then we allow those that have a more public-facing role, we allow them to share that information with the private sector, like CISA. And you may not actually want the IC agency shouting, hey, patch this vulnerability quickly, and drawing attention to it. CCI partners extensively on collection, analysis, and targeting efforts with NGA and other elements across the IC and law enforcement. As I mentioned, CCI is comprised of this cross-section of CIA, including human intelligence officers, technical intelligence officers, analysts, technologists, and more GEOINT is playing a part in CIA's cyber mission in surprising ways and across all of those aspects of what we do. Intelligence is a team sport, and I think there's a talk tomorrow that's titled that. And CCI is leveraging the capabilities and authorities of our NGA partners to the fullest extent. We see this as CCI leverages geospatial intelligence to aid us at the front end of our operations, all the way to jointly written and disseminated finished analysis that we provide to policymakers. We also share information and inform NGA-produced and released intelligence. And as I mentioned, cyber operations are not completely executed in cyberspace. Understanding the physical and temporal and geospatial realities facing a cyber operation can completely change the course of action and the analytic judgments of collection on the backside. Now, not surprisingly, one of CCI's closest partners is NSA. And we used to not have the best relationship, but it's come a long way from a tense deconfliction to now a team effort where we defer to the best athlete and often enable one agency to the other, leveraging our authorities judiciously. Cyber Command is also a collaborator bringing scale and unique authorities to the cyber mission. We work side by side with our FBI partners to inform and focus on defense when appropriate, and collaborate and share to conduct cyber operations and analysis. In this way, we're able to build a whole of government cyber intelligence team, layering authorities, personnel, resources together into one place. In the world of cyber intelligence, there's always this tension, this spy versus spy, where CCI sees vulnerabilities as opportunities. Technical progress presents advantages, but also barriers. We are measured and careful and persistent, but so are our adversaries. With the challenges and opportunities I've addressed here, we cannot compete on our own. In the face of a threat that challenges our capabilities and our scale, we have to be more tightly integrated as a community and more connected to private industry. We must work together, not just deconflict. This is one of America's greatest strengths. While the PRC negotiates transactions with other countries and compels by force of law, the US builds strategic alliances with partners around the world and mutually beneficial relationships with American industry. Thank you all for your attention. I'm excited to get to know all of you more tonight and tomorrow, and I'm happy to answer any questions if Jeff wants to come back up and join me, as long as he promises not to tell any horrible jokes.
You know you love my Disney jokes, and you clearly excelled at your speech. Thank you very much once again.
You, Jeff.
All right, so backstage we were talking about your passions, about your workforce, right? About the people that are there. Can you talk? You mentioned your plug for recruiting. I'll echo that as well. But overall, cyber workforce, there's shortages and there's challenges to get those people into government, into industry. What initiatives is the agency pursuing to develop more cyber talent pipelines to attract and retain those top talents?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I didn't seed it, Jeff. Now, one of the reasons that CCI and CIA are being more active in the unclassified community and engaging more and sharing what we do is trying to attract talent and retain that talent. And it's very difficult, as many of you know who are in the government or military or sometimes academia. We can't compete with the pay that many of the companies are offering. And so what CIA has going for it is a really compelling, cool mission. And so we're trying to share that to attract more cyber experts and AI, DevOps, and across all of the technical disciplines. But it's not just about recruiting them, because we invest so much in training them, whether they're our cyber threat analysts and then they go out into the cyber threat industry, or our technologists who we teach these amazing, crazy technical skills, investing years before they're ever allowed to touch a keyboard. And so it's important for us to retain them. So CIA has invested over the last 2 years in some pay programs as well as training and retention programs to try to retain and build the premier cyber workforce in the world. And I think we've come a long way with competing, maybe not with private industry, but at least with other agencies and having special pay tiers, which may not seem like a big deal to you, but it's a huge deal to the CIA, where there's only one pay band. There's nothing else. There are only agency employees. So for the first time, we have a carve out for cyber operators. And I think there are initiatives like that that are really helping us build that workforce. The other thing that we're doing is investing in training and upskilling and continuous learning. So rather than just making those pay bands an entitlement, there's a give and a take. The officer has to maintain a certain level of expertise, which I think is also unusual in the government. So similar to keeping a CISSP where you have training hours each year and you may have to recertify, we're doing that for our cyber operators and that cadre as well.
I could listen to you on and on about China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Talk to me, if you can, a little bit more about, are there other connections with the discipline of geospatial intelligence with cyber intelligence?
With cyber intelligence, I mean, like I said, it's across the board. So on the front end, CCI really has two primary roles. One is to produce that intelligence that informs our policymakers, and two is to enable the missions of others. And whether we're doing either of those things, it begins with understanding the threat. And it's not just understanding what their capabilities are, it's understanding the physical positioning, it's understanding who did what and when they did it, and that informs how we approach the cyber threat, particularly when we're talking about North Korea and China, where we have almost no physical access. We rely so much on what the geospatial intelligence community offers us, and the agency and the broader community relies so much on the cyber access that we provide in the absence of traditional intelligence where you can just send someone to a cocktail party and they can meet a friend, right? A lot of that now is moving online so that the initial targeting work, the initial planning, and the initial prioritization of how we align our resources is really a whole of government effort, and geospatial intelligence in particular plays a critical role.
I want to pause our great conversation here, again, asking for any questions from the audience. Please use the app, please text, please get those questions to us, because look forward to having many more questions here. All right, unpause, back to our conversation here. Integration was one of the things that you talked about. This question is about integration of information technology from the infrastructure, data, software, cyber, other analytical solutions. Can you talk about some commonalities of both the challenges and the successes of bringing those all together?
Well, I mean, there's probably better people, because CIA still uses Lotus Notes, and some of you in this room may not even know what Lotus Notes is. Some guy up in the front does. We segregate our data pretty much physically, and we are just on the cusp of integrating more novel technology, cloud, multi-tenant cloud, and bringing on capabilities. I would say in the TS region, the C2S, which is the CIA top secret cloud region, there's a long way to go with parity with private industry. And so I think again, leveraging what other agencies do best and focusing on retaining and bringing in the data that is most critical to us is imperative, because we just don't have the scale, the technology, or the money to recreate NSA. So where CIA is taking steps forward, at least in the cyberspace, is leveraging NSA infrastructure and NSA tools, because they understand big data. They do it incredibly well. They built out the IC Gov Cloud, which the broader IC has been great about adopting, and CIA has been a little bit slower. And so this is why I talked a little bit about how we have to learn to be a faster follower. CIA historically has felt this need to build everything in-house. And so leveraging tools, technology, software, and expertise outside of CIA, even if it's at the TS scale, TS level, is new to us, but we are starting. And I'm not sure if that fully answered the question.
I think it did. All right, dealer's choice. You have two U's. We can either do universities or Ukraine. Which one do you want to do first?
Universities?
All right.
Or 500, Pat?
Or 500, Alex. All right. How will
sorry.
CIA expand its relationship with universities for both applied research and workforce development?
We are trying that as well. The CIA stood up a new directorate in 2017, I want to say, about 8 years ago, and it's called the Directorate of Digital Innovation. And in the Directorate of Digital Innovation, they established Digital Futures. And Digital Futures is not just about engaging with private industry and academia, but also building the mechanisms for them to collaborate with us. So we have a really cool relationship right now with MIT, where they're sending experts to us, and they also host our folks. We also have relationships with Stanford and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And so, not from a recruiting perspective, but from a capability, research, and sharing of development activities, I think that is starting and has matured really well. From a recruiting perspective, we still have the legacy model of the recruitment center as separate, and so where I'm trying to lean in the cyber center is encouraging our experts to go out on recruiting trips to help speak the language, so that you don't have someone with no cyber experience going to a very technical university, setting up a table and trying to recruit technical officers. We're also trying to engage more in societies like Society of Women Engineers or ITE, where we can go get mid-career hires, or recruiting events where you have alumni events. We're doing that, but I'll say we're a human organization, and a lot of what we do is who you know, and I'm sure somebody knew somebody at Stanford and MIT, and that's why we have relationships there. And almost everyone we hire has a reference from someone on the inside. So room for progress, but we are making progress.
I think it shows the value of the agencies put into just this GEOINT conference. I know there's 3 titans of the agency that are going to be here, yourself included, for today and tomorrow, and I think that speaks volume to the relationship about getting out into the open and seeing people and interact, yeah?
Well, yes, and I'll add on to that. One of them is Linnea Jones, which goes back to that cross-IC collaboration. She was the deputy CIO of NSA, and now she's the CIO of CIA. So sharing that the infrastructure foundations and the best practices that NSA, who are experts at data integration, exploitation, and analysis, bringing her over to the CIA to help us build that infrastructure of the future has been critical. So whenever she talks, y'all should listen to her. And then also Jennifer Posa, Dr. Posa, who is our wellness officer, our first chief wellness and well-being officer at the CIA, is about taking better care of our officers. So again, back to the recruitment and retention, we tend to work hard, as many across the community do, and so we're starting to recognize that we have to do more to enable our officers to stay healthy, so that when those times come that we have to pull all-nighters or go overseas, we're ready for that challenge. So she has been a tremendous asset to the agency, and I'm thrilled they're here.
Well, and I believe Ms. Jones was also the deputy to John Sherman when over at the ICCIO shop. So another speaker for tomorrow. Big plug for main stage for that. All right, now back to the other U in our Jeopardy around the world here. This is Ukraine. You mentioned open source. You talked about integration and collaboration across there. But how has the war in Ukraine impacted how the U.S. and its international partners, many of which are represented here in the audience, collaborate countering on any one of the geographies that you mentioned and their cyber capabilities?
We work a lot with our international partners, and again, this is pretty new for us. We have a very robust strategy, understanding which of the international players have the access, the means, and the interest, where we share common goals and common interests. That's often the gap in the Venn diagram of who we work with. But I probably can't say much beyond that. Besides,
it's going well, and it'll continue. That sounds like it's
going well with our partners. Yes.
Look forward to that continuing. All right, you mentioned interactions in person. Are there any other best ways for companies or people with relevant technology that can help you and your workforce support the agency?
I think what I've seen best is just trying to get an audience. But Digital Futures did release a BAA called Digital Hammer, which allows companies who do not have cleared officers to see what the CIA is interested in from a technical perspective and provide bids to us or proposals, white papers to us at an unclassified level to see if there's interest in engaging. I think it's still a long, difficult road to hoe to get up and into the agency, but it does give them broader exposure. Where I've seen generally smaller new companies do well is when they can partner with some of the big primes, and that at least gets them the audience and the understanding of where we're at. My other 2 cents is, man, we never met a data set we didn't want to buy. And those, you don't have to necessarily have classified people to be able to sell data to the agencies and the broader community.
From the audience that we have here, you talked about partnerships often in your talk. Anything else in kind of closing comments or questions from academia to labs to private to public? Any other things about partnerships that should be mentioned?
We do a lot with the labs, and maybe I didn't talk much about the work that we do with the national labs. And I think we're seeing, CIA is not an R&D agency, and so leveraging that very sensitive research and having that done with our national lab partners is a critical part of us staying ahead. And I think that both leveraging the work that's already done and then tailoring, I've done some incredible stuff with Lawrence Livermore, for example, but they do play a very important role in the cyber community. And the other place that I'll just mention on, because it's unique to cyber threat, and maybe geospatial sees some of the same, in the cyber threat intelligence community, and maybe I shouldn't say names, but like Mandiant, CrowdStrike, those companies that are so big, and you'll see a lot of their announcements come out even before CISA of what they find, we leverage them a lot. We just don't have the scale that they do. And this is a place where CCI is really getting better about leveraging the unclassified work and moving our officers into their spaces rather than our traditional model where we try to scoop up that work and bring it all to the high side, at which point it's completely, it's perishable, right? It's out of date the moment we bring that technology inside. And then we bring those experts on the inside too, and they lose access to that bountiful open source information that they have when they're in their companies. So that is a place that I think we're making great progress, is how to collaborate more closely with the cyber threat industry on the outside.
And you said you're going to be here tomorrow for the GEOINT conference.
I will be.
Any other closing thoughts as we wrap up our Q&A section here?
No, only that I appreciate you all being here on a Sunday. Don't worry, it's super hot outside, so you're not missing that much. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
All right. Well, please join me in giving a huge round of applause and appreciation, Dare King. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, wonderful.
Oh, thank you.